Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever time it is, wherever you happen to be, whoever you happen to be. Welcome once again to Full Fat Spoiler Chat, the show in which we talk about a recent piece of nerd entertainment and break down all sorts of information about it and our opinions. And as you can see, with all of the we's and ours, that's obviously the royal we. I'm alone tonight by myself amongst our Nerd Caliber crew, which is the usual suspects that would be here for you to discuss this. So it'll probably be a shorter show. And the topic of the show, in case you didn't get from the various teasers out on whatever social media you're jumping into this from, is the movie Synchronic. Described in my introductions or descriptions in all of the events as the new Netflix movie, and that, as it turns out, is not true. I'll get into that in a little bit. But I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber, first-person shooter on Facebook as a cosplay photographer, Burley_adopter on Twitter and a couple of other places as mostly a tech journalist and a few other things. We already have people in the chat. Waifu Pennywise, welcome back to the show. Thank you for joining us. As we always do, throw out the spoiler warning. If you haven't seen Synchronic and you don't want the ending spoiled, this is a sci-fi mystery thriller. So I'm going to spoil the ending. In talking about how it works or doesn't with the whole movie, then you probably don't want to be watching this. If you don't mind the spoilers, you have no interest in watching it or whatever, that's fine. Please stay with us. Stay with me. I'm going to keep using us because we usually have a team here. And throw out comments, questions like you usually do. So that would be awesome. And do a quick run around here to the other chats, Facebook and Twitch. We get nobody on there quite yet. All right. And frankly, I'm kind of guessing that this is not going to be a particularly deeply interactive show. Synchronic sounds like a whale documentary. Okay. I'm not sure I get that, but okay. So this movie, I'll give you a bit of a background like we always do. We start with some background. It's an original IP written by the directors Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, starring Anthony Mackie and Jamie Dornan as two EMTs in New Orleans who wind up getting involved in this bizarre designer drug that seems to have odd side effects that ultimately we find out include time travel, sort of, or really, or it's a wonderfully complex plot, which is rendered very well with a very small cast. The movie apparently came out, its initial distribution date is listed as September of 2019, so it had some kind of a release in theaters or wherever it went, September 2019. It had general release, according to IMDb, on October 2020, which means it either hit theaters and nobody was going to theaters anyway, or that's when the Blu-ray dropped or whatever. It hit Netflix this month. But it was such a quiet movie as far as buzz or hype or talk. That's why I assumed it was a Netflix movie. The only thing I had ever heard about it's like, oh, there's this movie on Netflix called Synchronic. Check it out. It turns out no, it was actually made and released as an independent, an indie film, but put out there in whatever theater releases were happening in the last year and a half. So the basic gist of it is, like I said, Anthony Mackie and Jamie Dornan play two EMTs, best friends. They've known each other for a long time. Apparently, even before they became EMTs, both of them thought they might have actually wanted to be doctors. Jamie Dornan is married and has a daughter. Let's bring her up. Brianna. That is played by Ali Ionides. Ionides. Anyway. who apparently was in a couple of things that I actually like. She played the character Cassie in Elementary for a number of seasons, and was Tilda in Into the Badlands for most of its run. Didn't much care for Into the Badlands, but I really liked Elementary. Um, the CBS's modern take on Sherlock in New York instead of London. Um, and her character Cassie was sort of another um, analytical genius, not unlike Sherlock, that became a sort of a student of his. He was her mentor. But Brianna in this movie is kind of a troubled teen and trying to find her way in the world, and that seems to be the kind of characters that this Ali Ioannidis plays, and plays very well. Um, Jamie Dornan, of course, the only thing I know him from is 50 Shades of Grey series, and I've never seen any of them. So I know most people just absolutely despise the movies. I have no idea how well he did. He's very good in this. As the two main characters are, Steve and Danny. Let's go back to the full cast. There we go. Dennis, Steve and Dennis. Dennis Danley, I think is his full name. Get more involved in, finding people who have succumbed to this drug, and really bizarre things happen to them. They wind up discovering that Dennis's daughter Brianna has disappeared, apparently in relation to this drug, and it just gets weirder from there. That's the basic gist of it. The two people who wrote it and directed it, it's a writing team, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, also directed The Endless, which was a very, very well received movie, also truly bizarre experiential kind of movie, where they played the two main characters kind of essentially themselves, having come out of a UFO death cult, religious cult, and some weirdness about their past catches up with them when they're adults. And it's very telling that this movie, Synchronic, is very much like that movie. It is a slow burn, lots of deep conversation, superbly acted science fiction thriller. An independent movie with a small cast, with a wonderful science fiction premise, very much like Deus Ex Machina, the wonderful Australian film Upgrade. It falls very squarely into the niche that those movies would occupy, and that's really my wheelhouse. I love big spectacle sci-fi, of course, but I really love thoughtful, smaller science fiction movies. Arrival, it had a big cast, and obviously it was a bigger movie, and Denis Villeneuve directed it, so directed the hell out of it. But still, it is a very personal science fiction story, and it's just wonderful. Waifu Pennywise, dang, I wonder whose idea was that. Which idea? Because it's been kind of going on for a while. Anaya Ochoa, welcome to the show. And Waifu, if you let me know which, what were you referring to when you say I wonder whose idea was that, I'll see if I can comment on it if I know anything about it. So, as we usually do with the show at this point, we talk of things we liked about it, things we didn't like. Pretty easy, as you can tell from what I've been describing this. I really like this movie a lot. It hits right on my sweet spots. It is very well written. It's superbly acted. This may be, by whose idea was the whole story? Apparently, no, I don't know whether Benson or Moorhead had the initial idea. It's not based on any science fiction story. They came up with it. But they are the two writers, so it's definitely their baby. Um, Anthony Mackie is his best in this in anything I've ever seen him in. And I'm including current Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where he has some pretty deep stuff to bite into as an actor. He just goes way beyond that in this movie. He's outstanding. Jamie Dornan is excellent. Again, I don't know anything. I've never seen anything else he's been in, so I have no idea what to compare him against. And the secondary actors, there's a lot of local New Orleans actors that are used as secondary characters. Anthony Mackie's doctor, we find out in the course, again, spoiler warnings, pretty quickly through, of course, the movie, that he has a brain tumor, um, which affects his pineal gland, and that, in fact, is part of one of the reasons why he is able to be affected by this drug, where apparently only younger people can be affected by it. According to this, I don't know about the science of this, that once you get to a certain age, the pineal gland starts to ossify slightly. And as long as you're below that age, you can, your pineal gland can be affected by this drug, and you can experience time travel. And because of the fact that he's had this tumor in his brain, right on his pineal gland, for apparently a very long time, Steve, Anthony Mackie's character, his pineal gland is essentially youthful. It has not ossified. So he's able to experience the time travel as well. It's an innovative, creative idea, as Waifu Pennywise was getting at. Who came up with this whole idea? It's pretty out there. It's it's beautifully directed. There are clear moments where you can say that was a director's choice to do it that way, and it's a good choice. It's it's not one of those, why in the world did you film that, Godzilla versus Kong. This, you look at it and go, oh, okay, I get what the director's doing with the camera, or with the with the setting here. That's really cool. I like that. It has almost no background music whatsoever, which is, I think it's great. I mean, I love beautiful scores. Who doesn't? They can do wonderful things. This is, going back to the term you used, waifu documentary, even though not in relation to this specifically, but it is much more like a documentary in that sense. There are moments when there is music. There's diegetic music. There's music that's inside the show. Record players and car stereo and so on. But score, there's almost nothing. And again, I really like that. I appreciate that. It grounds the film and makes it more real, and really makes the performance of the actors stand out. We're not relying on the score to tell us how to feel about what the actors are presenting us. We have to go entirely on the actors, and it's really, really good. Let's see, what else did I like about it? We've hit cast, the direction. I'm fine with the setting of it being New Orleans. It's a little odd. I'm going to have to look this one up. I'm trying to do this real quickly. That this reminds me of another New Orleans time travel movie. This one with Denzel Washington. Deja Vu. From back in 2006. It was good. It wasn't as well written, and certainly wasn't quite as exciting as, not exciting, as involving as this movie Synchronic is. But it's really funny that, why would you pick New Orleans particularly to do, be the location for these two separate, completely unrelated time travel movies? But they do a great job with the New Orleans setting. I mean, New Orleans is a big part of it. The time travel is geographic specific. So you go back in time to a particular point in history, but always at exactly the same location where you happen to be standing or sitting when the drug kicks in. So because they're all in and around New Orleans, it's all, either early New Orleans or way earlier than New Orleans. If I was going to be, nitpicky, they have, at one point, Anthony Mackie travels back in time to an ice age. And it is just a complete tundra around New Orleans. And I don't think, and he runs across an early human. I don't think that the ice age, the glaciers came that far down during the period when humans had just first crossed over and were making their way through the continent. In fact, I'm pretty sure that by the time humans got to where New Orleans was, the glaciers had started retreating up, further north. But I don't know that for sure, and I'm not going to let that bother me if they got that little bit of science, and history wrong. The other points in which they go back in time are there much more for the personal development of the story and the solving of the mystery. In case you can't tell, Steve, Anthony Mackie's character, eventually comes to realize that what happened to Brianna was that she disappeared somehow when traveling back in time. The way the drug works is once the drug's effects end, and it's right around 7 minutes, you come back to where you were, assuming you hadn't left whatever you were in contact with, or the area where whatever you were in contact with is. And so he is assuming that, she is no longer in the area where she disappeared. So it's a wonderful premise on how he analyzes the situation, how he figures out how to potentially rescue Brianna, how part of the decision of how they can figure out where she might be turns out to be wrong, but lucky, which is part of what they're trying to say with the movie, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And it's smart writing. It's really cool, aside from, again, what might be a little historical inaccuracy. I don't know if there's anything I can really say I didn't like about it. It's dark, because it's a thriller, and because they're EMTs who apparently are on the night shift all the time. It's a pretty dark movie. There's one section where Steve hears an intruder in his house or his apartment, that at least 5 seconds of are just complete pitch black until he turns a light on in his room. So, and again, that's a decision the directors and editors decide to make. But that was, it's a little dark to get through. It is emotionally a little tough to get through. No, waifu, it doesn't have a sinister meaning. Well, I'll get to meaning and theme and tone in a little bit. It's not a sinister meaning, but it is a mystery thriller, so there are sinister aspects to it. So it's a little dark. It's a slow burn, which I love. You don't need to race from point to point to point, as long as what's happening at every point is something worth watching. And in this case, it's the writing and the performances. When it's slow, when you got conversations like, early on, Steve talking to Brianna here, in this scene, it establishes the characters quite well, gives you information that you need to know about them, and it's done by really good actors, and so it's worth watching. But if you're expecting something that just, zips right along, it's not one of those movies. Again, very much along the lines of Deus Ex Machina, which is basically, three people having one-on-one conversations with each other at various times, almost throughout the entire movie. So it's not quite that slow in conversation. There's more action with the time travel stuff and so on, but it's still a pretty slow burn. And I don't mind that. It's an hour and 20 minutes. It's 102 minutes, so an hour and 42 minutes, um, and that's a good length for it. If it was a full 2 hour movie at the pace that it runs, it probably would have worn out its welcome. If it was just 90 minutes, they wouldn't have gotten enough in to actually really develop these characters, and that's one of the best things about it. You really feel for these characters in a very human way by the time you're close to the end of the movie. Um, Now, this is the big spoiler. Put that out there. It's talking about the ending because it's something that I kind of don't like and something that I am very satisfied with. I'll explain what that means. So, as you can gather, Steve goes to try to rescue Brianna. He finds out where and when she is, and ultimately winds up. Actually, I just realized that there's a plot hole in that. Where you are when you take the drug determines what time in the past you go to. Well, no, that's not true. He doesn't get to that point until... never mind. I thought there was a plot hole there, but there isn't. Anyway, he finds out where she is in time and goes there. Circumstances happen. I don't need to spell it out, but ultimately he winds up not getting back to the exact spot when the drug wears off, and the movie ends with he's sort of phasing in and out. Brianna, who is back in current time with her dad, and her dad can see him phasing in and out, and her dad, his partner, his best friend Dennis, reaches out to shake his hand, and his hand is solid enough for a bit that he can shake it. And I'm sitting there going, I don't know whether or not I want him to come back, because that's really easy. Waifu, so as I said, the drug that they take, this drug called Synchronic, is what causes the time travel to happen. The way they describe it, I guess I didn't describe it. The drug affects the pineal gland, and it allows anybody who takes it to experience time as something that happens all at once instead of a linear series of individual events or instances of time. With people who are younger or who where that pineal gland has not started to solidify or ossify at all, they can actually physically move to one of those points. And the point at which they move to is determined by their physical location when they take the drug. Adults cannot do that. They can experience time, but they can't travel, back into it. So thank you for bringing that up. I did not explain how that worked. So anyway, he's sort of phasing in and out. He shakes Dennis's hand, and I'm really unsure whether or not I want him to come back, which would be a really facile and the good ending, or I want him to sacrifice, which would also be kind of a facile. Oh, he sacrificed himself to save because he's dying of brain cancer anyway, and and it fades to black on the handshake, so you don't know whether or not he comes back or gets stuck back in time. And I find that very satisfying because it didn't force the writers to make one of two choices, both of which I would have found to be just a little too convenient or cliche. But it's also very frustrating because I don't know what happened. So it's a really interesting ending, which I could go either in I liked it or it was something that didn't work for me. Because it had both of those elements for me. It saved me from those two cliched possibilities, but it still was kind of a, oh wait, this is The Sopranos all over again. Anyway, so you had asked about sinister meaning or about meaning. And this is the point where we start talking about the meaning and themes and so on. Um, obviously, well, not obviously because we don't actually see him. It seems like sacrifice is, one of the themes of this show, or of this movie, and you get that a bit in. So Dennis is having marital problems. Nothing grandiose or dramatic. Nobody's fooling around with anybody. They're two people who are drifting apart. But he comes to realize that it's pretty much his problem, and it's his problem for not for wanting what he has but not being satisfied with it. And so in that case, he doesn't want to apparently sacrifice like anything for their mutual happiness. Um, and that's part of his personality. Early on, Steve, mentions that he just doesn't ever stop complaining. Um, and so Steve's sacrifice, maybe for Brianna, is a big part of it. And then ultimately, Dennis realizing that sacrifice is something that needs to happen in any relationship. There's got to be a give and take on both sides, and if you're not willing to do the give, it's not going to work. I think it toys with the idea of nihilism, of the idea that there is nothing has any meaning in the universe, except it completely denies that with some of the random chance things that allow him to find Brianna and Brianna to be rescued. And they're not wild, outlandish. That could never happen. It's just it's like, okay, well, that worked out in his favor, and now it's going to allow him to further move along in finding Brianna and rescuing her. And again, that's good writing. It doesn't come across as a Deus Ex Machina, where it's like, oh, okay, well, something that you didn't even see could possibly happen just comes in from left field and saves the day. It's not that. It's just that at some point they are discussing life in the universe and whatever, and what life means. And Steve says, it's like, there are the differences between you and me come down to basically random chance and luck. And he's in this case he's talking about the fact that Dennis has a family, a wife and a child, and he doesn't. He's kind of sleeps around with different women. I wouldn't say every night, but as often as he can. And he's Anthony Mackie, so it's pretty often. And he's saying, the difference between your life and my life is literally luck and random chance. Talking about how they met together. They met Dennis's wife, and it was Steve who set the two of them up on a blind date. And that led to them falling in love and getting married. So the overall meaning of this is that while you may not necessarily want to ascribe, any sort of higher being or consciousness to, the sort of random aspects of the universe, those random aspects will play out in somebody's favor as much as they play out against somebody. And in this case, some of those things played out in the main character's favors at various points in their lives. So I think that the meaning there is that, nihilism is not correct if you view it in the way that, say, Rick and Morty does, that nothing has any meaning. Therefore, there's no point in trying. But instead say, well, sure, there's no meaning, but that means that there's random chance that literally anything could happen. And it's a very sort of positive way of looking at random circumstance as opposed to nihilism, which is a very negative way. Um, Waifu, it's not a romance in any sense that you would ever. Waifu says, it sounds like it's a romance. It's not a romance in any sense that you would ever classify it as a romance. However, the moments when you see Tara is Dennis's wife, when you see Dennis and Tara interacting well together, it's very romantic. Um, it also has those moments when they aren't interacting well together at all. Um, and in that case, it's much more of an interpersonal drama than it is a romance. And this movie has elements of all of that. And then, of course, when you look at Steve's life, it's not a romance whatsoever. You only see him interact with one of the women that he sleeps with. We're just told then from that point, on, that that's the way he is all the time. He admits it, and Dennis calls him out on it all the time. Um, so, and there's very little that I would say call it a romance, but there are very romantic moments in it to counterbalance the very painful, dramatic, emotional moments that are in it. And there are a lot of those. And Anthony Mackie gets his opportunity to act through those, which he doesn't in his usual action-oriented type stuff. And he's really good at it, which is, I love him obviously as Sam Wilson in all of the Marvel MCU stuff, but I loved him I think it was his first appearance, or the first one I saw him in Hurt Locker. But let's give this guy a chance to do some more deeply emotional, dramatic things, please. So, should you watch it? Yes. If you like smart science fiction-y mystery stories that are incredibly well written and very well acted, do it. If you are really just an MCU kind of guy and you want to watch it just for the best thing that Anthony Mackie has done that I can think of, do it. If you want to see what two of the directors for many of the upcoming episodes of the Moon Knight series, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, are going to be directing a number, or have directed a number, I'm not sure where they are at that, episodes of the upcoming Moon Knight series with Oscar Isaac, who was in Deus Ex Machina, and it all comes around, then do it. Because you get to see how these two directors handle essentially nerd type content. I mean, this is a science fiction show, and The Endless was a science fiction movie. The Endless was a science fiction-y kind of movie. And this will really give you a sense of what Moon Knight could be. And I think in their hands, as the directors of their episodes are doing, I'm really looking forward to what they do with Moon Knight. They're not showrunners or the writers or whatever. That's Jeremy Slater, who is responsible for... No, let me get my... he was the primary writer and considered one of the co-creators of the Netflix adaptation of Umbrella Academy. So if you liked Umbrella Academy, Slater is the guy who's behind Moon Knight. And if you like these guys, Benson and Moorhead's direction in this movie or in any of the others they've done, then you're going to love Moon Knight. And I'm really looking forward to it now, more than I was before when they cast Oscar Isaac as Mark Spector. So, yes, watch this movie if you're a science fiction fan. If you're a good acting fan, if you're a fan of good writing, I would highly recommend it. And with that, I will start wrapping this up. As always, we throw out the, if I can find it, where is it? The Patreon request. Please, if you want to, go check us out at patreon.com/nerdcaliber. It's up on your screen right now. We basically just have two tiers. It's, there for you to give a little bit of money per month to support us. Cons are coming back. we'll be relatively safe. I've got my second shot, so I'm good to go, but I'll still wear masks and so on. This money from Patreon basically just helps us build more content, go to cons and things like that. So check it out, patreon.com/nerdcaliber. Our next show, next Thursday, is going to be, surprise, surprise, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because it wraps up tomorrow. So if you have not seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier completely by next Thursday, don't tune in. And if you don't like spoilers, if you don't mind spoilers, tune in. And if you have seen it, like every other MCU fan nerd has, of course, by then yes, please do join us next Thursday for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Monday is our second episode of No Nerd Caliber, and our team will be talking about Star Wars stuff because this episode is before May the 4th, which is, of course, the Star Wars Day. And the topic is your top three favorite planets in the Star Wars movies or TV. So that could include any of the streaming stuff, any of the cartoon series, and of course, all 9 of the movies. So 8 o'clock Monday, April 26th, No Nerd Caliber. Our team will be talking about, what it is that we like. We'll probably throw in a few that we don't like because, why not take some digs? But you get to know a little bit more about what it is that, gets us excited in a particular fandom. And then, of course, Tuesday is Nerd Week Live. Already posting up new stuff for next week. The nerd news never stops, apparently. So we'll see you on one of those days or all of those days, I hope. And in the meantime, once again, I'm Rodney Brown for Nerd Caliber here, signing off. Thanks for joining us in the chats.